Hey, good afternoon, folks, and good morning to some. This is Zach Hubeck with WAVE and MBSI WAVE. Thank you all so much for joining us today for our Cambium Networks NSE 3000 webinar. If you're here for that event, you are absolutely in the right place. Folks, we can only control so much in our lives, and one of that is our time. We're honored you chose to spend your time with us this afternoon. We promise to make it worth your while. So first and foremost, I just wanted to introduce myself. I have responsibility for WAVE and MBSI WAVE. I'm the Executive Vice President of Marketing here for both organizations. And the guests I have on the line with me today with Cambium Networks is Jagdish Giramaji, their Senior Director of Product Line Management, and Trevor Miranda, the Chief Architect for Enterprise Products for Cambium Networks. And I'd be remiss in not mentioning that we also have Nicole Devereaux, North American Channel Marketing Manager on the line from Cambium, and Leah Wiley, who's our marketing specialist with MBSI WAVE. So we've assembled this dream team together to really help you guys out and help you understand with great intimacy what this NSE 3000 solution is all about and how you guys can leverage this in your networks today. So for those of you unfamiliar with WAVE and MBSI WAVE, we're two distributors in the Cambium Networks channel. We serve Canada, US, and Caribbean. And we've been partners with Cambium since 2001. So we've seen a ton of innovation from Cambium over the years, starting with fixed wireless, now getting into fiber, and then also enterprise. And today we're focusing on that enterprise segment. And we've always had a lot of partners come to us saying, hey guys, do you offer a firewall solution or an SD-WAN solution? We've always had to say, you've got to look at a Fortinet or a Sonic Wall or somebody else. And Cambium has done it again. They've innovated and now are offering this NSE 3000 solution. So we're excited that this is going to help us round out that portfolio. We're able to keep it in a Cambium fold in enterprise solutions. And Trevor's going to walk us through some quick slides and really talk us through how this NSE 3000 applies to all of you on the line today. So last couple of things I need to do here is a couple of housekeeping things. So we love interaction, folks. So you've all been muted out of courtesy for Trevor while he's going through his presentation, but please submit some chat questions if you have questions at that time. And it applies to some of the slide where Trevor's going through. I'll stop him and pose that question, or we may hold your question to the end. But we love interaction and response with you guys, so please do submit questions if you have them. And then lastly, I just want to thank our presenters here for their time today. So why don't we start with a quick interaction, folks, right out of the gate. As we're kicking off and as I introduce Trevor here, let's ask the group this question. What security and SD-WAN vendors are you guys currently using today? And that's going to help Trevor shape some of his presentation while we do this. So what are you guys using today? If you could type those in as I introduce Trevor Miranda to take over, that would be awesome. So Trevor is our Chief Architect Enterprise. Sir, I turn the floor over to you. Thanks for your time today, sir.
Thank you so much, Zach. And hello, everyone. And thank you again for spending the next 45 minutes to an hour with us as we discover the NSE 3000. Many of you have used Cambium's products, are using Cambium's products, whether it's in the fixed wireless broadband space, whether it's a wired internet switching or enterprise Wi-Fi. And I'm very glad to have this opportunity to talk to you about this newest platform that we introduced a year ago to the enterprise portfolio, the Network Service Edge, or NSE, and in particular, the NSE 3000. And the second what Zach said, let's keep this interactive. This is as much about me telling you about the NSE 3000 as me wanting to learn, Cambium wanting to learn as to where your needs lie, what kind of product best fits your requirements, and what you would like to see in a product like this. So feel free to type in your questions or chat. And of course, we do have some polls coming in so that we can learn more about your point of view. So let's start with the basics. What is the NSE 3000 and the Network Service Edge? NSE is a platform delivered as an appliance that converges three broad areas of functionality. And the first one is related to the WAN edge, what happens at the interface between your LAN and your ISP connection. And these features are generally classified under the headings of SD-WAN. So the NSE is an SD-WAN product, software-defined WAN. It does all the basic necessary routing functions. And SD-WAN is increasingly used as an alternative to dedicated circuits, so whether it's something like VSATs or MPLS that have been pretty common in the past. Now, the challenge with a lot of these circuits is that they're pretty expensive, but the benefit is that they do provide a certain level of service, a guaranteed level of service. However, what has happened in the recent past is that now you have commercial internet delivered by AT&T, Verizon, and so on. That's increased quite a lot in bandwidth, improved latency, and is also much more cost effective. So what these set of features does is lets you layer quality of service, load balancing, failover, all these features on top of these links to provide you with a level of service that is equivalent to that what you would get over MPLS. So what the NSE has is multiple WAN links. So you could have one or more WAN links and could load balance between them or use these WAN links as active backup links. It is intelligent enough to be so that you are able to set these up as also primary high-speed links that are used most of the time, and also have the second link to be a backup link. Maybe it's a backup LTE link or a lower speed fixed wireless link or something else. And when this failover happens, you want only critical traffic to go over that link. So we let you do this using the flow preference feature. So for instance, let's say this is something like a cafe or a small restaurant, where you have the main link, which is used for guest access, which is used normally for all your commercial transactions, all of that. But when you fail over to the backup link, it has much lower capacity. So you maybe only want to drop guest traffic and only use it to send up your point of sale data. So the NSE can do that. We allow you to do QoS, let you say things like, hey, if this is an office environment, you want to limit the amount of bandwidth that goes to Netflix or ESPN. You instead want Teams and GoToMeeting and Zoom to have priority. So you can do things like that through its QoS features. The second set of features is related to security. Now, security is of importance to organizations of all sizes. And today, the security needs go beyond simply having a firewall that blocks traffic to certain IP addresses or blocks traffic on certain ports. And the NSE has evolved or has been conceived to match these evolving security needs. It has the traditional layer 2 to layer 7 firewall functionality. It includes an IDS IPS. We have a site-to-site VPN, which is of particular interest to distributed enterprises. So for instance, you have a central headquarters and a bunch of different sites that need to connect back so that you have certain services in central headquarters accessible to remote sites. So all that is part of the NSE. We also include content filtering, and this is based on DNS. We have more than 88 different categories that websites are classified under. And this is a dynamic list that is updated in real time through a cloud-based service. So on the NSE, we make use of cloud-based intelligence to improve the functionality, to assist in the functionality that is implemented on the on-site appliance. So this means that when new websites come up, when new host names are created, you don't have to manually update the filtering on the NSE. It's not something that is done with a software upgrade or signatures that need to be manually administered by the network admin. Instead, in real time, the NSE gets updates from the cloud and is able to filter with the latest databases that we have. This, for example, is of particular interest to verticals like education, where, for example, if you're taking government funding for IT for schools, you're generally required to implement some kind of content filtering. And the great thing about this is a converged product that includes all these functionality. So you don't need a separate service or a separate device that does it. And in addition, the management of this kind of content filtering, along with other devices, of course, is all through the same interface. We have VPN, remote VPN, and this device also includes VPN with multi-factor authentication. So remote VPN is a necessity in many cases, but then again, it's also a vector for attacks because employees leave passwords, sometimes leak, and that becomes an entry point for attackers. Now with multi-factor authentication, you have a second factor, And in this case, it's a one-time password using any of the common apps like Google Authenticator, which is used as a second factor so that you can authenticate VPN using that. And things like passwords that have not been expired or passwords that might have leaked, it adds a second layer of security around remote VPN. Now, application visibility of control and control is central to a lot of the features around the NSE. The reason being that there was a time when you could implement firewall rules, implement QoS using IP addresses and port numbers. You could say things like, traffic to this IP address, and you know that behind that IP address is a particular server and a service is prioritized or blocked. Or traffic to this port means it's a voice call and it needs to be treated in a particular manner. But the reality is that many applications, or probably most if you look at your internet traffic, have moved on to HTTPS over port 443. The applications are hosted in the cloud with dynamic IP addresses or large pools of IP addresses. So that model of control or policy creation isn't as useful or isn't as generally applicable as it used to be. It's still useful in some cases, but not always. Instead, we have a deep packet engine built into the NSE. And if you are familiar with the application visibility on our enterprise Wi-Fi APs, you'll see a similar interface. So we have a deep packet inspection built into the NSE that identifies over 2,000 applications. And when it comes to, say, firewall rules, instead of saying block this IP address or port number, you can say things like block Netflix or block BitTorrent or don't block Teams or prioritize GoToMeeting. Then the same goes to the features you see on the left-hand side. When you talk about traffic shaping, quality of service, flow preferences, all these can be done using your standard 5-tuple IP addresses, port numbers, or even better, you can do it using applications and say, these rules apply to this application. So in this way, it's a lot easier to configure. It's a lot more reliable because the signatures are regularly updated. So when application behaves differently, when it's using different servers, you don't need to go and update your firewall configuration. The last two features I'd like to highlight in this particular box are particularly unique to this product. And it's not something that you will generally see in a WAN edge security SD-WAN device. And a lot of our customers who've tried out this product for the first time particularly like these. The first is LAN vulnerability assessment. This is important because you not only need to look at the traffic going between your LAN and your WAN and inspect it to make sure there are no attacks coming in from the inside. But it's also important to be proactive, to look at devices which are on your LAN side, so supposedly trusted devices, and see whether those have any vulnerabilities exposed, which in turn might be used by a potential attacker to gain an entry point into your network. An example of this would be, say there's a camera in your enterprise network, something that's pretty common. And that camera runs an FTP server, which is something, again, some cameras do as a way of transferring files. And that FTP server, in turn, has some known vulnerabilities because this is an embedded device. The last time you did a firmware update on it was, well, probably never, or maybe a few years ago. And since then, a vulnerability has been discovered in that particular FTP server. Now, the threat scenario you need to be worried about here is that somebody uses that to gain access to the camera and gain control of it. And once they do that, that remote attacker is now in control of a device that is in your network, and then use that as a launchpad for attacks on your Windows domain server or any other application running in your network. So it's important to keep track of all these devices in your LAN, not just look at WAN LAN traffic for security, but also keep track of devices in your LAN and make sure that those are up to date and don't have any known vulnerability. So how do you do that? So what the NSE does is, anytime it sees a new device in the network and it has visibility into all the devices in the network, being at the WAN edge, being the DHCP server for all these devices, and whenever a new device connects, it runs a scan and checks what ports are open, tries to fingerprint the behavior of traffic and what's behind those ports, and identifies the applications running there on the device and what the nature of the device is. And that way, we are able to tell you things like, hey, there is a camera in your network which is running an FTP server, and that FTP server has this known vulnerability. And to track these vulnerabilities, we make use of a database that's run by NIST. That's a division of the US Department of Commerce, and it's an industry standard. Whenever security researchers find a vulnerability, they are generally filed there, and each vulnerability is given something called a CVE ID. And vendors also update that database with vulnerabilities they have discovered, as well as their solutions to those vulnerabilities. So we discover all of these, and then we are able to report back saying, this is the issue, this is the potential impact, this is the severity, and these are potential workarounds or solutions or firmware upgrades provided by the vendor. So this is a great tool to be proactive in terms of making sure that what's running in a network is fully up to date. The second feature that also something that people like is IoT security. Now you have an increasing number of OT IoT devices in your enterprise, and those numbers are simply growing in number. In many networks, there are more IoT devices than there are phones and laptops. There are thermostats, there are cameras, there are light bulbs, light switches, so many of them. And traditionally, the approach to IoT devices would be to isolate them in their own separate VLAN, to block them up from the internet so that they are not attacked. But that is increasingly not a viable option, because many of these devices talk back to servers in the cloud, and that's how they're controlled. That's where they upload data, whether it's video files or whether that's the interface through which you turn on your light switches or manage your intelligent devices. So you do need to give them internet access. The problem here is that these IoT devices are connected to the network, disconnected. The IT department or the MSP has very little visibility into what these devices are, right? So what can the IT admin do about it? Because all they see today is a MAC address that showed up in a network. Instead, what we have here is what the NSE does is looks at all the traffic from these devices anytime they are connected, looks at various signatures they offer, like how do they do their DHCP, what are the DNS servers they talk to, and a lot of such other data points. We collect all these fingerprints, run it through a machine learning-based algorithm that's set in the cloud, and then spit out the result and show the admin that this is a light bulb. And often we are able to identify the kind of device, the broad category it belongs to, whether it's a light bulb, whether it's a switch, whether it's a camera, who its manufacturer is, and in many cases, even the software version it's running. So this now gives the IT admin visibility to the network. Now, when they see some device that they've never seen before, they have more than a MAC address. They have clear visibility that, hey, somebody's connected a new light switch. I need to look into whether it's legitimate and whether this is the right network it should be connected to, what are the right policies I need to apply to it. So that's very important with the increasing number of IoT devices in our network. The third set of features relates to services. Now, to bring up any site, you obviously need DHCP DNS, and the NSE offers that. And this is particularly important for smaller sites where you might not want to go through the overhead of setting up separate VMs for all of these different services. And it's not just DHCP DNS. We also have Radius on this. And the great thing about this is it takes away some of the headaches associated with installing and running WPA enterprise on these small sites. It's a hassle running a separate Radius server, maintaining a user database. So a lot of these small businesses or even medium-sized businesses simply set up a network with a passphrase, even for their corporate internal users. What you could do instead is use the NSE's Radius server, set up a user database there, and now everybody uses username login-based based authentication. So you can switch to WPA2 Enterprise, WPA3 Enterprise. This fully works with our Wi-Fi APs. And this same Radius server can also be used for remote VPN authentication. So again, you don't need two sets of credentials for your remote VPN versus corporate Wi-Fi authentication. All that is integrated. And all of this, the NSE as a product platform is fully managed by CN Maestro. And again, if you've used any of other Cambium's products, you know that CN Maestro is our single pane of glass used to manage all our networking products, all our enterprise networking products. And like them, the NSE is also managed through the same interface. And if you're again familiar with how the configuration works for our AP group, APs, how the configuration works, how the dashboards works for our APs or switches, the NSE is very similar. So the learning curve for you will be fairly minimal. If you're familiar with this technology in general, the training you need to do to be able to onboard, to manage, to configure NSE through CN Maestro is fairly minimal. Now, what about the particular appliance? We launched the NSE 3000 last year. This is targeted at small and medium businesses with up to 1 Gbps of throughput. So in terms of form factor, it has two RJ45 or SFP WAN ports, 1 Gbps each, 4 copper ports on the LAN side. This particular form factor can be table mounted or wall mounted. And when it comes to throughput, we call it a 1 Gbps class throughput device. What this means is that with all features turned on, all those features I talked about in the previous slide, all the firewall features, deep packet inspection, GeoIP filters, all of that turned on, you can rest assured that you'll have throughput in that class of 900 plus, 950 Mbps plus. And this is particularly important because in case of many products in this class, the top line advertised number might be pretty high. They might say we can do X Gbps of routing, but then you turn on the next generation firewall and throughput becomes a third of that. You turn on IDS, IPS, you turn on deep packet inspection, the throughput keeps going down. So you need to over-provision and buy a bigger box than what the headline suggests. In case of the NSE 3000, this is a number that we specify with the features turned on. And if you look at a data sheet, we do specify in detail what features you can turn on and how it impacts the throughput. In terms of...
I've got a quick question for you, Trevor. When you look at the NSE 3000, let's say people want to choose an alternative. When you really look at the NSE 3000, it looks like we've got a ton of feature built into this thing. Yep. If you were to go with a competitive solution, how many appliances are you literally looking at to match the ability and the feature set of the NSE 3000? Is there another competitor that just has one box, or do you have to pair multiple boxes together? Help us out with that.
Yeah, so historically, all these different sets of features that I've talked about have been implemented in separate boxes. Historically, you had a separate IDS IPS solution running in a VM somewhere. You'll have a router firewall box, and then you'll have the other features like DNS through a separate vendor, DNS categorization, and that separate service. Increasingly, small and medium businesses, especially versus the very large enterprises, are moving towards converging this. And this happened in stages. There was something called next generation firewall. Later, you had a product category called UTM, Unified Threat Management, which integrates more and more of this. So this is where the market is headed. In all fairness to our competitors, many of them do integrate the firewall and SD-WAN features that I talked about. But some of the unique things I mentioned, things like the IoT device visibility, the things like the LAN vulnerability assessment, that tends to be a separate service. Like LAN vulnerability assessment, your products like Rapid7, Nessus, and so on, that you need to manage separately, install separately, remember to run. I've not seen this level of integration that we have shown in the NSE platform. So some of those are pretty unique. And I do have another slide that goes into a more detailed comparison with the top 5, I'd say, competitors. Where this is called out. And just for reference, we do have things like battle cards for each of these vendors that go into much more detail on a feature-by-feature basis. So,
all right, very cool. Trevor, finish out this slide, and then, folks, we're going to have a poll real quick here. Go ahead, sir.
Okay, thanks, Zach.
Trevor, sorry to Jagdish. So I just want to jump in there. So in addition to the things that Trevor mentioned, right? So the complexity that the competitors bring in that we don't have with NSE 3000 is the licensing structure. Invariably, they have more than one license for various features, and it just becomes quite complex. With NSE 3000, and this Trevor will cover in a few minutes here, but it's a single subscription, one license. And then the last point I want to make is a lot of customers actually shop for a single vendor with the best of breed solution in Wi-Fi, switching, and security SD-WAN. And all of that leads to a single management stuff. So that is what is another uniqueness of that Cambium brings to the table with the new NSE 3000. Obviously, some of you are most of you are familiar with our switching and Wi-Fi portfolio and CN Maestro, and now with the introduction of NSE 3000, it all sort of ties in nicely. Best of breed, enterprise grade, single management, unlike some vendors that just focus on security SD-WAN.
Awesome.
Trevor, back to you.
Yeah, thanks, Jagdish. That's a great point. And yeah, I personally had this experience not too long ago when I was researching competitors, and they might have those features, but you got to buy a separate license for some of these. And in my case, I thought I'd bought cloud license, but it turns out there's this 30-page document that explains which license you need to buy for which features. And I made a mistake and ordered the wrong SKU. So I'll go into a little bit more detail later, but essentially what it boils down to, with the NSE, there's one subscription you purchase that gives you management, that gives you all the features I talked about in the previous slide. You need not worry about buying lots of different SKUs, trying to figure out what is the license you need for this particular deployment. It's one subscription all in. And that's a great point. And yeah, everyone else, if you do have questions, yeah, please do keep them coming, and we'll answer them.
Well, Trevor, let's do this. Let's submit a quick poll. It's very timely based on our recent dialogue here. So folks, quick poll, and click in your answers here as Leah populates this on the screen. Would you prefer having a single vendor for Wi-Fi switching and security? Yes, no question. Type your answers in now. Oh, I can't vote. This is so unfair.
Yep. It's asking me the question and says I can't vote. All right, so yeah, looking forward to your responses here.
Click in your responses. Leah will show us the results in just a moment here. So Trevor, let's pause. Let's have some awkward silence. And there are results, sir.
All right.
90% said yes. Beautiful. All right, Leah, thanks for the help. Trevor, back to you, sir.
All right, thanks, Leah. Well, so the overwhelming majority folks said yes, they are looking for a single vendor solution. And, you know, a lot of our customers have pointed out the advantages this brings, not only through a single management pane, but also in the event when something goes wrong, when on those rare occasions when you have to troubleshoot a network, we have a single pane through which you identify all these components and through which you're debugging, whether it's your wired ports, wire ports, we're looking at things on the WAN side, all that is much easier. It's much easier for your new employees to come up to speed and learn how to set up your wired switching, your wireless access, as well as your security and SD-WAN, because it's a single vendor solution. So moving on to the value proposition, why is the NSE of interest to you here? Well, as I've mentioned more than once, this is a converged edge device. It brings in all these different services that you anyways need at a site, right? You don't have to worry about integrating a bunch of different solutions. You know that this all just works, whether it's the SD-WAN features, whether it's traffic shaping, whether it's having that kind of redundancy with multiple links, firewalling, remote VPN, DHCP, DNS, all that is integrated onto the NHCP, which gives you all the advantages of having a converged solution. It's simple to use and deploy. It's all managed through CN Maestro, and like our other enterprise networking products, it offers zero-touch onboarding. You don't really need to do anything on site through the local interface. You just plug it in, and it'll dial back to CN Maestro, download the pre-configured configuration, and your site is up and running. And then you have a single console which gives you visibility in what's going on in your wired network, as well as what's going on in on your WAN, making it much easier for you to quickly deploy a lot of small and medium-sized branches. I've talked about the LAN vulnerability, so I'll not go again into much more detail, but again, looking at the vulnerable devices on your LAN side is just as important as looking at traffic coming in from your WAN. So this gives you the alerts when something goes wrong, as well as the possible remediation of these issues. Again, a lot of OT IoT devices in the enterprise network. lot of OT IoT devices that IT doesn't directly manage through mobile device management software, which potentially have not been upgraded in a while, which potentially have new attacks being discovered against them. The NSE lets you identify these devices, lets you monitor them, and make sure they have the right security posture. All right. So,
all right, Trevor, before we bounce to that, I love me a good poll, and I want to go another round with the team before we move on, my man. So next poll question for the team. Please type in your answers here. What is your most common internet bandwidth at your site? We've got less than 250 meg, 250 to 500, 501 to a gig, or a gig plus. Type in your answers, folks. Trevor and I will have an awkward silence. All right, let's see what our answers are, Leah. If you could share those, that would be amazing. There we go. Looks like 56% of folks are just under a gig and no less than 500 meg. So we've got some other folks as well. 250 to 500 and one less than 250 meg. Cool. Trevor, hope that helps you out on your presentation here.
It does, yeah. So this is great. While internet speeds are definitely increasing, what the results show is that most folks are in the 500 to 1 gig range, and I guess a third in the 250 to 500 Mbps range. And what that means is that the NSE is pretty well positioned to serve these kind of bandwidth requirements. Again, the main limiting factor is going to be your 1 Gbps or lower internet speed. In terms of number of users or devices, we do have some recommendations. We talk about 300 users, 500 devices, but that's not really a hard limit. The NSE doesn't limit you to 300 users or certain number of devices. And what will ultimately limit you is, as you increase the number of users, depending on the usage patterns, they will require a certain amount of bandwidth. And given that nearly all of you said that you have WAN links of up to 1 Gbps, the NSE 3000 definitely is well positioned to work in those environments. So where are people using this today? Again, there's nothing inherent to the NSE that limits the verticals it can be deployed in. But as we look back over the past year and a half or so, where our customers have deployed the NSE, we find some of these stand out as places where it's increasingly being put into use. One is quick serve restaurants. In these environments, you typically have a guest network and a restaurant network with more critical stuff going on. But of course, every consumer-facing site, customer-facing location also needs a guest network. That's a basic necessity. So NSE lets you separate this traffic and make sure that your critical traffic is prioritized over the WAN link. You definitely need an always-on internet connection, because you don't have internet connectivity, your sales stop at these locations. So they often deploy a redundant link, a lower speed link, that is less expensive than your main link, but comes into play when there's a failure there in the main link. And the NSE makes sure that the failure is seamless and that your critical business traffic still has internet connectivity. And in some of these quick serve restaurants, these are smaller chains sometimes, and you need to connect the restaurant itself with some central location. Again, the site-to-site VPN feature of the NSE comes into play there. K-12 is another vertical where we are seeing deployments. And there in particular, people like the content categorization. In many countries, that's a requirement. Definitely in the US, where there's E-rate funding, for example. And again, this has an advantage. You don't need to integrate a separate solution with an additional charge. Instead, the NSE integrates all of this. RV parks, campsite, construction sites. And here again, people make use of the fact, or like the fact, that it's the same CN Maestro managing the point-to-point, point-to-multipoint products that give internet connectivity to these RV parks, for example, or temporary sites. And then you have the rest of the Cambium portfolio also at the site distributing connectivity, whether it's the NSE along with wired switching and along with enterprise Wi-Fi, again, all managed through a single pane. Luxury homes is one place where we are seeing deployments. Again, larger homes using enterprise Wi-Fi products, they also need some sort of device providing security and providing you with the WAN routing functionality. That's where the NSE comes into play. But then we do see deployments across, horizontally across small and medium businesses. A distributed enterprise, because you need to connect sites with VPN and make sure that those remote sites are secure, and those remote sites can be managed through the cloud, right? You don't want a device which can only be managed locally, which somebody has to log on to on-site, or you need to expose the configuration interface to the internet in general, and then make that a vector for attacks. Instead, NSE managed through CN Maestro. In case of a distributed enterprise, your central IT can still fully manage that site. Urgent care clinics, doctors' offices, smaller banks or credit unions. Again, here, these in the past used MPLS for guaranteed connectivity in case of locations like banks. The NSE lets you migrate onto an SD-WAN connection. And I'll go into a little bit more detail about this kind of deployment in my next slide. Sorry, before we do that, let's compare the NSE with the competitors. I mentioned this earlier that we do have a detailed battle cards against all of these. But here is a brief summary of where the NSE stands out in terms of features. One is, do we have a single stack with enterprise class Wi-Fi security and switching? Yes, with Cambium, you do that with our enterprise Wi-Fi 6, 6E, and CN Matrix switching. LAN vulnerability assessment, IoT security, we've gone into some detail on these. All this is integrated with the NSE. Some of our competitors do offer that, but it might be with an additional license. In terms of throughput, as I mentioned, you can be assured that when you're going for an up to 1 Gbps WAN link, the NSE will be good. You don't need to worry about and look into the fine print as to what happens to the throughput when I turned on the firewall or when I turn on IDS IPS. A very simplified license. There's just one subscription. With many of the competitors, there might be a dozen or 2 dozen SKUs that you might have to deal with. And to simplify things, they bundle up these SKUs into something like a gold, platinum, bronze categorization. But still, there are multiple options there, and you need to figure out what's right for you. In case of the NSE, there is no sudden sticker shock. You don't turn on a feature and want to turn on a feature and realize, hey, I need to purchase yet another license. It's all included. And there we have a comparison of what the hardware MSRP and the base subscription prices. The NSE is pretty attractive price-wise. And keep in mind that these are MSRP prices. On top of that, you will have your partner discounts added. And we do have a special offer for folks on this webinar that I'll talk about a little later. But we do have also the detailed battle cards I talked about. If you go to a partner portal and put in NSE battle cards, you'll see a more detailed comparison with all these other competitors.
Trevor, one thing, we did a really nice job. Our first poll of asking what competitive solutions are using today. We covered a vast majority of them that were listed from the folks. The one that is missing is Ubiquiti. So if you could comment real quick on how do you guys feel you compare against the Ubiquiti solution? I think that would be helpful for the group. Yeah, so compared with Ubiquiti, so if you look at a feature set, we have a lot of unique capabilities. I'd say, again, that LAN vulnerability assessment, IoT security are critical aspects. When it comes to DNS categorization, we do not rely on simply open source free databases. We partner with one of the industry leading providers of DNS categorization called BrightCloud. So that's a very powerful product that's recognized across the industry in terms of DNS categorization, to pick just one thing. This is fully cloud managed through CN Maestro. I know with Ubiquiti, you have a bunch of different options, but this is integrated within a management solution. In terms of throughput, like I said, that you can expect a 900 Mbps class performance regardless of what features you turn on. With Ubiquiti, you need to do a little bit of mapping between features and throughput and what happens when you turn that on. Okay. And yeah, when you look at the entire package, you can expect to have the same level of Cambium support that you see with our enterprise Wi-Fi products, with our switching products. We have support, somebody you can call, somebody you can contact to assist with. We have
the standard 7.5 support. We also have a 24/7 support option for the product. So you can expect that level of service and help and assistance from us as you deploy your networks.
Awesome. And you've got at least 2 great distributors who have great technical aptitude and knowledge who are willing to help as well. Awesome. Thank you, Trevor.
Thanks, Zach. All right. So I'd like to go a little bit more detail over just one particular application, right? As I mentioned earlier, traditionally MPLS, or in some cases VSAT, was a way to ensure guaranteed connectivity for remote branch locations. And that's pretty expensive. An MPLS connection of even something less than 100 Mbps is probably going to cost you a lot more than, say, a 1 gig connection that's from that's offered as a business internet service by Verizon or Comcast or Spectrum or somebody else. So switching to these type of internet connectivity is definitely attractive. You save a lot of money, and then you have this whole lot of extra bandwidth that you can use to, say, offer guest access or implement new applications on site, or instead of hosting servers on site, move to cloud-based services. But the flip side of that is, how can you offer the same guarantee of throughput, uptime, quality of service with these kind of internet connectivity solutions versus MPLS? And that's where an SD-WAN solution comes in. That's where the NSE comes in. So as I mentioned earlier, we support multiple WAN ports, and this is how you make sure you have the uptime. So between those 2 WAN ports, you'll ideally deploy the 2 WAN solutions through 2 different providers, either 2 different ISPs or even 2 different technologies, like fiber versus LTE, or fiber versus some other solution, fixed wireless broadband, something like that for backup. And the NSE makes sure you have seamless failover when the need arises. You can configure your failover settings, make sure it monitors the internet and rapidly switches over so that your business critical traffic goes through. And again, make sure that even when you're using that one high bandwidth WAN link, when there is any kind of congestion, your important business traffic always goes through, while guest traffic, for example, gets deprioritized. So the advantage here is that, again, you have replaced your expensive MPLS circuits. You still have that same level of reliability. You have the same level of uptime. You have the same quality as far as your critical applications are concerned. And you either save on your bandwidth costs and spend them elsewhere in IT, or you make use of the increased bandwidth you have to offer your customers additional solutions or deploy additional applications over the cloud. And this is typically what a network like this would look at, right? When you deploy an all Cambium stack at the site, you have the NSE, you have the CN matrix switching, and enterprise Wi-Fi. And on an enterprise Wi-Fi, we have the similar kinds of L7 application controls that you can use to, for example, block peer-to-peer traffic. You have the NSE2 using the same kind of logic, using the similar kind of interface to implement QoS over the WAN, prioritization over the WAN, and make sure you're using the WAN links in the right fashion. So in this particular case, if you look at this picture, there's a high bandwidth WAN link. That would be your primary use case. And when required, you fail over to the WAN, the secondary WAN link, while still making sure that, say, the Teams calls go through fine, making sure your Zoom calls go through fine. And when there is available bandwidth, maybe somebody could run YouTube or Netflix or something like this. All right, going a little bit more detail into the SKUs and pricing. So this is the hardware. The NSE 3000 part number is the hardware, and you have the MSRP listed there. In addition, you are required to purchase a CN Maestro subscription. And like the other CN Maestro subscriptions offered by Cambium, these come in 1, 3, 5-year terms. The longer the term, the more attractive the pricing becomes. And this is the only subscription you require. This is the only license you need in order to turn on and utilize all those features that we've talked about in this webinar. In addition, you do have the option of purchasing extended warranty. And like I said, we do have the Cambium Advanced add-on, which gives you access to 24/7 tax support, which gives you next business day advanced replacement for the hardware, should something go wrong with your hardware. And of course, the reason you might want this is because your WAN connectivity is critical. in the remote event something goes wrong, it's useful to have this next business days replacement. And all of this is at a fairly affordable price. Now, again, I'd like to emphasize that as far as SKUs is concerned, as far as licenses are concerned, we have tried to simplify this to the bare minimum possible. You know what hardware you need to purchase, and then all you need to decide is whether you want the subscription for 1 year, 3 year, 5 year. You don't need to worry about which subscription SKU matches which feature set. Now, in addition to that, now these are MSRP prices. As partners, you're eligible for our regular partner discounts, so your actual pricing will be lower than what you see on the screen. But in addition to this, we have a special program going on for folks on this webinar, and that will be valid through the end of Q1. We will be offering deep discounts for you so that you can try out this product, run some POCs, deploy them with customers, and get very comfortable with this at a very attractive price. And you will get the details of this pricing through email, since this is not a public program. And you'll see an email from MBSI WAVs after this webinar with the details on the pricing you will see. And I promise you that's a very attractive pricing and there are no limits on how many units you can buy or how many subscriptions you can purchase. So you can go ahead and use that special pricing through end of Q1. And that is valid on the purchase of an NSC 3000 with a 3-year subscription. So we have a special pricing for this combo for folks on this webinar that will be valid through the end of Q1. And
Trevor, it was the least we could do after putting them through all of this polling madness.
Absolutely, yeah. And we made you do a lot of work through this webinar. So in exchange, this is what you get. All right. So to finish off, why do you care about this, right? If you're today selling or managing Wi-Fi and wired switching, this gives you an opportunity to extend the solution you offer. Increasingly, what our MSP customers tell us is that their customers, in turn, are asking them to be not only managed service providers, but also be managed security service providers. And this provides you with a pathway to telling your customers, hey, I'm doing your wired wireless access. I can also do your security and SD-WAN. And if you're not doing this today, this is something new you can do. If you're already doing this today, it's now something you can do with the full Cambium stack. Now, this also opens up the number of customers that you can reach with this complete solution. And your customers often might make a decision first based on security SD-WAN. So that lets you put security and SD-WAN first. Margin pressures definitely present across networking. These tend to be lower on security. People tend to be willing to pay more there. So adding security and SD-WAN to your portfolio definitely helps you in terms of your overall margins. And the TAM in this space is much larger. And like I said before, we have a special promo running for you through the end of Q1 for everybody on this webinar that will let you quickly try it out yourself, run a POC, and deploy it with customers and give you confidence that this product can meet your needs. So to sum this up, we do have a lot of resources to help you learn more about the NSE, to help you, in turn, talk about it with your customers. We do have some case studies, and the links are there. They're available on our channel portal. You can click on these links, or if you want to go back to our portal later, just put in NSE case studies, and you'll see the results there. The data sheet, of course, and like I mentioned, the data sheet goes into some detail over what kind of throughputs you can expect, and you can be assured that the NSP will meet your WAN bandwidth needs. We have a detailed solution guide, and if you want a quick video that you'd like to share with somebody else, it doesn't go into a lot of detail, but it's a quick 5 to 10 minute introduction you can share with other folks. We have one there. And if you do need a PowerPoint that you can use as a basis for your presentations on the NSE, the link is there too. So thanks everyone for your time today. And thanks for staying through this webinar and responding to the poll questions. Definitely, we did learn a bit more about how you deploy SD-WAN and WAN links today. Thanks for your time, and thanks to MBSI WAV and Zach in particular for hosting us. Have a good rest of the week, everyone.
All right, Trevor, before we wrap, If anybody has any additional questions, why don't you go ahead and pop those into the chat. As Trevor was stating, we're going to be sending you guys an email with our special promo pricing through Cambium. You can get through WAV and MBSI WAV. Folks, if there's a lot of assets on the Cambium portal, if you're not a Cambium partner today, we can help you navigate that. Would love to have you in the channel here and learning more about the NSE 3000 solution and Cambium solutions altogether. I don't see anything quite yet in the chat here, Trevor, but I just wanted to say thank you to you and Jagdish for a great session. And we look forward to working with all of you folks on this. All right. Last call for any questions. All right, gentlemen and ladies, I think we can wrap this. Thank you so much, Trevor. Great information. And folks will be in touch and look forward to working with you.
Thanks, everyone.
Thanks, team. Bye-bye.